Good morning. I'm Jill Kaufman, and I'm very happy to be here with you guys on Monday morning at 11. Um, Today, we're going to be talking about betrayal and moving on after betrayal, and also other things having to do with moving on. I just wanted to see who's here. If you're here, please let me know. Just say hello in the comments, and um, any kind of questions that you have, please post, and I'll try to cover everything that comes up, because I know that if you're having struggles with something, I'm sure somebody else is also having those kinds of struggles. So the more questions you ask, the better it is for everybody. Um, so I wanted to start talking about moving on after divorce in general, and or while you're going through the divorce. First of all, you're going to feel tons of feelings, which is completely normal. Your feelings are going to go back and forth day to day, depending upon what happens, depending upon your mood. And all of that is normal. In the beginning, when there's a betrayal, um, good morning, Gracie, um, there's a shock. Obviously, you feel shocked. You're not really processing the betrayal. You are um, not really functioning normally, and that's typical. Um, and then shock can kind of go into anger or sadness. All of that is normal. Um, and then a lot of people will feel shame. Um, and shame, I wanted to talk about a little bit because I feel like um, people don't understand it. Um, and I'm just reading from Cheryl. I hope you're well. I'm in the very early stages of separation after my husband walked out at the end of September to be with a close friend, so this is needed. So glad you're here, Cheryl. Um, and so when you're feeling shame, after a betrayal, um, I wanted to read something that Brene Brown, who I think is amazing, she's shared a ton of information about shame. So, shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. And the problem when you are feeling shame is that you don't feel good about yourself. So someone else has betrayed you and you don't feel good about yourself. And that feeling of shame, um, causes us to really get stuck in the place that we are emotionally. So we're not able to move on. We're not able to go to the next step in our lives because we're feeling badly about ourselves. And it's, when you think about it, feeling shame for someone else's um, mistreatment of you doesn't really make sense. Where somebody else made a mistake, somebody else did something to you, that is not your fault. But we feel that it is because we start asking ourselves, what did I do to make them do this? What did I do to deserve this? What is my um, responsibility here? And that those are all um, in inappropriate questions for us to be asking ourselves. Um, we shouldn't feel shame because someone else did something. It usually has nothing to do with the person who was betrayed. It usually has to do with the person who did the betraying. And that doesn't mean that, your relationship, your marriage was perfect. It just means that the actual act of cheating or leaving or betraying someone is not the correct response to a marriage that has flaws. So that response of betrayal is the person who did its responsibility. It is not the person who was betrayed. So, I hope I'm explaining myself correctly and clearly when your natural inclination is to blame yourself, and it really has nothing to do with you. So that shame that we're feeling, is something that we really have to work on and talk to ourselves with some positive self-talk. And the other thing about shame, and Brene Brown explains this so well, so I'm going to give you some resources for her towards the end of this Facebook Live. But the antidote to shame is empathy. And what she means by that is empathy is feeling for others and caring for others. So an example is being in this group, and when you hear that somebody else has also had the same experience of being betrayed, you feel empathy for them, and you say, me too, I feel that way too, and you express empathy for someone, and that minimizes your shame, because you realize, oh, I'm not the only person who feels this way. Other people have gone through this. Other people have gone through worse, and they feel good about themselves. So the idea is to try to work on feeling good about yourself, feeling empathy for others, connecting with others, and all of that goes against that shame and goes against the feeling of being betrayed and focusing and getting stuck in that place. So I'm going to read some other people are here. Thank you, Francis. Likes the response, the act of betrayal isn't on you. And it isn't. Anything that an ex does to you, or your spouse does to you, is really their choice. Their behavior, their choice, and what they do. It doesn't really have anything to do with you. I mean, they're responding to you. They could respond to you in many different ways. Like if your marriage is struggling, you can go to counseling. You can take that now they have all these online couples courses that you can work on your marriage online through a class over several weeks. There's so many things that you can do. You can talk to each other and say, I'm not happy. I don't want things to be this way. So there's so many options, but betrayal is a choice that the person makes. So, good morning, Gabe, and Gary, and I'm so glad to have you guys here this morning. Please let me know what questions you have. Sorry, I can't see without my glasses, so I have to keep putting them on. So the other piece of shame is to recognize the triggers. Recognize when you're feeling those feelings, when your heart starts racing, when you feel angry, and your blood starts pumping. Those physical responses mean that you're being triggered by something. It could be something that someone says or something that someone does. So you have to recognize what's going on in your body so that you are aware of when you're being triggered. And when you're triggered, then you can go to that negative self-talk of when, why did he or she do this to me? What did I do? What could I have done differently? A lot of people get that question. And the bottom line is, you did whatever you did because that's who you are, and that's okay. And accepting who you are and being okay with who you are is really the bottom line. And that's what you have to work towards. The more, and what can you do right now to work towards accepting yourself and being okay with yourself and being proud of who you are? We all have moments when we regret something we've done or feel bad about something we've done, and that's okay. But in general, your core person, being okay with who you are, that's what's so important in this path of moving on. So Donna said, I feel severe empathy for my family as I let them down by leaving. Okay, so here's the other piece of it. If anybody did do the leaving, don't beat yourself up for that, because I don't know your specific situation, Donna, but I'm sure there was a reason for it. If there was severe, unhappiness in the relationship, if your spouse was unwilling to work at the relationship. You know, if there's so many reasons why you leave a relationship, and I don't want anybody to beat themselves up for that, because nobody knows your specific circumstance and nobody can judge that, you know, what you've done. Nobody walked in your shoes, nobody lived in your marriage. Um, you know, I'm sharing this from clients and lots of different experiences, but a lot of people seem like great people from the outside, and and you don't know what's going on in that marriage. You don't know how they're treating their spouse. You don't know what mental health issues are there. So, you know, we all have to be really, really non judgmental with each other and with ourselves, because we really don't know, you know, the situation behind closed doors in families. So, Donna, you left, and we all respect your decision, and you need to respect your decision. And what I always say is that, you know, you do everything you can when you have children to protect them, and then, you know, a divorce is hurting them, right? And you would never do that if there wasn't a real reason to do that. And I'm sure that there was a reason. And at some point, we can all share those reasons with each other, um, you know, on the in the Facebook group. So, um, okay, so Francis is definitely a strong person with his faith, and he uses prayer and talking to people who can relate. Um, it's a sense of comfort and affirmation that you're not alone and you can make it through it. Yeah, I mean, this is what's important and why this group is so important, because we need to support each other no matter what our situation is. And the way that you move on and you heal is individual to you. And Francis, I totally respect that prayer is works for you, and that's amazing. And we all need to find our individual way for us to feel, um, you know, feel better about ourselves and to heal. What I recommend is meditation. And meditation is a really wonderful way to kind of get all the noise out of your head and really learn how to clear your head and just focus on the present moment. I highly recommend people starting, you know, to meditate through, you know, there's tons of apps, there's YouTube videos. I use 10% Happier, um, and there's free, you know, free meditation on those apps. On 10% Happier in particular, there's Headspace. I know there's tons of different. Calm is another app, but even YouTube videos of meditation. So find the one that you know, that speaks to you, and it can, you know, it's similar to prayer, but it's not faith-based in that you really try to look inside and calm your internal, um, you know, brain, which for a lot of us is kind of difficult. So, any other questions that we have this morning? Because the other thing I wanted to um, talk about is Brene Brown has some TED Talks that are really incredible. And she talks about shame, and she talks about guilt versus shame and the difference. And so Brene Brown is spelled Brene. Brown is her last name. And this is another thing that she said. Um, Connection. I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from that relationship. So that's another thing I wanted to focus on, was having the support around you that is really beneficial to you. You know, having people who don't judge you is really important. A lot of times friends and families who have been with you, they will make a judgment because they know your ex, or they you know, they know the situation and they think they know what's best for you. But nobody really knows what's best for you except for you. And it's getting that confidence in yourself to follow your instincts and to know that, if someone is being judgmental, you really need to let them know that's not okay. Or in some extreme circumstances, you know, not not speak to them for a while because they're not good for you. So having that insight into who's good for you and who isn't is really important. You need to tease out which people are supportive and which people aren't, and that's what this group is about. It's really being non-judgmental and supportive of one another, and so that's what hopefully you can get from this group and people who are supportive. Okay. Um, so one day at a time. Yeah. Thank you um, for saying that. I'm not sure who said that. And welcome, Karinia. So, you know, just as a recap, trying to recognize the stages that you're going through when you've been um, betrayed or going through a divorce. It's really all similar stages. Initially, it's shock, and that's going to take a little while to get over the shock. You have to give yourself time. And then there's some anger, sadness. Um, in the shock, just as part of the shock, there's some denial and bargaining. If I do this, maybe things can get better. This isn't really happening. These things are part of the shock experience when you've been betrayed. And, you feel, really like you can't function and you can't think straight and you can't think clearly. That is all extremely normal. It won't last forever. And you need to ground yourself as much as you can with people who are supportive and with things that you can do to take care of yourself. But that shock is going to, last a certain amount of time. Then you get into the anger, sadness, and eventually you get to a point where you can, accept what's happened and start that process of healing. I recommend people write in journals. Obviously, go to counseling if you need to. Talk to friends. Find people who are going through it or who've been through it, because really nobody understands this unless you've been through it. It is so devastating, and someone who hasn't been through it really doesn't. I mean, maybe they can understand it, but typically they don't understand it in the same way. Okay. And then, and then the idea that you feel shame, and that can get you stuck where you're not going to be able to move on. And the thing about shame, which I didn't mention, I forgot to mention, is the secrecy is what, how shame survives. Okay, so if you don't talk about your shame, if you don't talk to someone, who's safe to talk to, who you can get non-judgmental responses from, if you don't talk about it, it will increase. So the antidote to shame is empathy, and with the empathy is not being secret about it, saying, I am ashamed that, I did this to my children. I am ashamed that I left my family. I am ashamed that my wife or husband cheated on me. Talking about it and really getting, being okay, saying that this happened. And this is not something that I want to keep in secret. I feel shame for this. And then the other person hopefully will empathize with you. I can understand why you feel that way, but you really don't need to feel shame for this. And so talking about it is so important, because that secrecy makes the shame stronger. So I encourage everybody to talk about it. All right. So now a question from Alan. What if you want to continue fighting for your marriage, but your spouse says there's no chance? I have so many people in this group who are having this issue. Should I keep fighting, over just or fighting over or just let everything go. My wife has already filed for divorce and moved out 8 months ago with our 6 children. Okay, so I want to tell you that I have clients who have been divorced and are back together. Um, this is an individual decision. You really have to make the decision on how you want to handle this. If you think that your um, wife has an an opening to speaking to you or to um, reconnecting with you, that it may be something that you want to do, and you need to talk to someone about that. You need to think about it. You need to, if you have someone you can bounce that off with, um, because you know I don't know the situation with your wife. I don't know the situation with if they've moved on. If they have moved on and there's no chance to reconcile, you know, pushing that is probably not the best thing for you, because it sounds like, at that point you don't you're just kind of stuck, you know. Um, but just because someone files for divorce doesn't mean they have completely moved on. So that is something you have to determine with a conversation with your wife, or with kind of talking about it, talking through it with other people. Um, some people there are, there's no way that they're going to come back, and then you have to really work on yourself, accepting it and moving on with your life. But I don't know the situation, with you, Alan, and I think that's something you need to sit down and work through with somebody who can bounce that off of you. Um, I am offering a free 30-minute consultation. Um, so that's something, I could work with you through. Um, but usually when you go through those, all the things that's happened, and talk about it with somebody, you kind of get clarity on that. So that's what I would encourage you to do. Okay, well, we are running to the end of time. I'm so happy that you guys all joined, and I love the questions and the comments, and I appreciate all of it. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will be back here next Monday at 11 Eastern Time, and I really appreciate all of you in this group. Take care. Bye-bye.